Welcome everybody to the next version of my interview series for women leaders on Clarity and Confidence TV. I'm so excited to have Angela Champ with us today. And I met Angela in a past life when I was doing leadership training, and she was the HR director. Actually, she was the Chief Human Resources Officer for a credit union in Canada. And I'm going to let her tell you all about her because I can't do it justice. So welcome, Angela. I would love if you could just tell everybody who you are, what you do, what you love. And in the time of COVID and quarantine, you can share maybe any fun things that you're doing to make your quarantine a little bit more exciting.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me. When I saw your call out for speakers, I had to put up my hand and say, I'd love to talk to you about this topic about clarity and confidence because it's something that I believe in so much and love to talk about. So thank you for having me. As you mentioned, I was the CHRO for a credit union here in Canada, in British Columbia. And I have been a senior HR executive in many industries, including insurance. I've been in oil and gas. I've worked in banking. I've worked in construction. I've worked in tourism, and so I've just had a most fantastic career, and all of those roles have given me insight into the topic of confidence and about leadership. And so happy to be here to talk to you about it. I live here just outside of Vancouver, British Columbia with my family, my husband and my daughter and our cat Paris. And you're right, we are in the age of COVID right now. And so like a lot of people, I have perfected my bread making skills.
Ooh,
and so I have never baked or eaten so much bread in my life.
yeah.
But one other fun thing that I've been doing is I decided that pre-COVID, that for 2020, I was going to start an experiment and try and learn one new thing every week in 2020. Little did I know that COVID was going to have us in such a situation where we might have more time on our hands, but It's been great fun because I've been learning all sorts of things. I learned how to arm knit and of course making bread and making donuts. There's a lot of food related things. I just realized that. And knitting and learning Italian. And probably the funnest thing I've done, which I did not master, but is to learn how to do a Bruno Mars dance routine. I'll tell you, if I could dance like Bruno Mars, that would be just brilliant. But that's been a lot of fun, and it's been keeping me and my whole family occupied during this COVID period.
That's amazing. I think baking is a thing because I haven't actually taken to the baking. I do enjoy cooking supper, so that's been good. But we get a little lazy in that we're on a quest to find our local area's best cinnamon rolls, because since we can't go do Sunday brunch anymore. So I know what you mean about the food. So, and I love what you said, and this is going to be kind of a two-part question. So when I put out an all call, said, hey, nominate people who you think would be a great person to interview on this women's leadership series, Angela was not only one of the first to respond, but one of the only people who nominated herself. I would be super curious before I ask you about your definition of confidence, but from your perspective as an executive leader, human resources, why is it, do you think, that more women don't nominate themselves? You know, because I think men have no problem raising their hand and saying, I'll be on it, right? But you know, what is it? And I wish more women would nominate themselves. So I would be curious on your perspective and what you've seen.
Kelly, you're so right. I think from an early age in grade school, we're taught to be quiet and to raise our hands when we want to ask a question and to wait our turn. And those are all very polite and civil responses to have. But you'll notice that not everybody does that. And then what happens is we get left behind. There's a lot of talk, and even in this new book that I just wrote, it's coming out in the fall, I write about advocates and sponsors, and particularly women. They look for advocates and sponsors to try and promote them because women, a lot of women especially, don't feel comfortable promoting themselves. They think it feels too aggressive or too ambitious. My goodness, let's not use that word, ambitious. And so they're reluctant to nominate themselves, but not everybody has an advocate. Not everybody has a sponsor. And sometimes we need to be our own advocates and our own sponsors. And so that's why I nominated myself. And I love it when I see women who, very calmly and very graciously say, I think I'd like to try that too. And put their hands up and say, how about me? Instead of always waiting for other people to promote them, for other people to say, hey, do you know what good work Kelly's doing? That's always fabulous when people can do that, but not everybody has that. And
Mhm.
so that's why I nominated myself.
That's amazing. And if I can give anybody a challenge today, and we're going to talk about your book, so they're going to go and look at that. But even before that, what is one thing you can nominate for yourself for today? And it could even just be something super, super, super tiny. Maybe you're going to nominate yourself out of something. Maybe it starts with nominating yourself to be not the cook tonight.
Yes.
And how can we practice those small things so then when it comes to the big things, like we've built up our confidence. And I think you are so right. Like, choose yourself, nominate yourself. And so
Yeah.
I'm putting a call out there to everybody to follow your lead and nominate themselves. So
Okay, everybody watching this, nominate yourself and make sure you get interviewed with Kelly.
there you go. I know. I love it. I would wish I could talk to everybody. So that brings me to my next question, which is, what's your definition of true confidence? What does it look like for you?
For me, true confidence is really feeling comfortable in your own skin, knowing that you are both as fallible and as exceptional as everyone else.
Mhm.
We're going to make mistakes. I'm going to trip. I'm going to fall. I'm going to fail. I'm going to look silly. And that's okay because everyone else will too. And so it's really about feeling comfortable in your skin no matter what happens.
I love that. Somebody told me once, I was in a coaching class, and she's now a dear friend of mine. She was a physician making a career transition. And we were talking about this whole confidence and what if I fail? And she just looked at me and so just deadpan said, she goes, "You are not that special." And I love how you just said
Yes,
that, right? I think sometimes we think we're special and like bad
yes.
things or even good things only happen to us, but really it happens to everybody. And I love how that story you just told, like, brings us all into collective humanity. We are not that special. And I say that with all the love in my heart.
That is so true. And I think that's what holds a lot of people back is they're so afraid of failing. And what they don't acknowledge is, yes, you will fail. You
Hmm.
will.
Yep.
And so will you, and so will you, and so will you. Everyone fails. And with some exceptions, it's not the end of the world. It's not going to kill you.
Yeah.
Okay, there are some things that might kill you if you fail, like if you
Yeah.
jump off a cliff and you don't land right. But in the main, things that we do all day, even little things I've noticed, like I used to travel a lot for work. And so it was not unusual for me to be in a city all by myself. I might know some people, I might not know some people, but because I traveled almost every week, I didn't want to just sit in a hotel room all the time. So I would go out for dinner, or I'd go to a movie, or I'd go to a concert by myself. And I had people who say, you went to a movie by yourself? And I'd be like, yes, because I'd like to see that movie.
Yeah.
And there's nobody around because I'm traveling. So I'd go by myself. And some people don't even have confidence to do something like that. Something so small. There's nothing to fail. There's nothing. And I'll say something else is people think, well, I'll be embarrassed and other people are going to be looking at me. Nobody's looking at you, honey.
Yeah.
Everybody is so self-absorbed.
Mhm.
Nobody's paying attention. And if they are, at worst, you know what? At best, they're going to forget about you or not even notice you, which maybe is a problem in itself. But at worst, they're going to go home and they're going to tell their family or their friends, hey, I was at a movie theater and I saw somebody at a movie by themselves. And somebody's going to be like, really? That's
That's a
actually
great
kind of
idea.
cool. And so maybe you'll inspire somebody by doing that.
Yeah.
It's really not that bad.
I love it. I remember traveling a lot for work too, and I really enjoyed going out to dinner and having a table for one. It was just a nice, peaceful dinner.
That's right.
I love it. So, all of these little confidence building activities, I want you to talk to me about what's one of the most bravest or courageous decisions you made in your career. And maybe it wasn't popular, maybe everybody thought you were crazy, but I'd love to have you tell women, especially the woman who's listening now, who might be thinking, "Ah, I need to take a big step, but it feels so crazy and scary." So I'd love to hear your story.
So I'll actually talk about this one, which is I was living in Vancouver and I was dating somebody in a different city. And we were having a long distance relationship for about a year. And we decided maybe we want to see where this goes. And so we talked about whether he should move to my city or whether I should move to his. it actually made more sense for him to move to my city because he was from here and he had family here. But the economy at the time was better in his city. And so I decided to quit my job, moved to a brand new city where the only person I knew was the person I was dating, who, by the way, is now my husband.
Oh,
And so it worked out okay.
yeah.
And with no job and no safety net, I just literally quit my job and moved to a new city. Everybody around me was, first of all, you don't have a job. You don't know if this relationship's going to go anywhere. You don't know anybody in this new city. You're going to leave all your friends behind. It was, it was very scary, but it was exciting too. I saw it as an adventure, and I thought, I can do this. It's a city. I can make friends. I can meet new people. And so I would say that's probably one of the bravest things I did in my career, and to be able to leave a stable job that I had where I was doing good work and people liked me and I was making a good income, and just to walk away from that because I thought there might be something different and something better, I thought was very courageous. It was
Oh my
scary.
gosh. So
Mhm.
now the women watching this right now are sweating because uh, they want to know how you had the courage to leap and just hope that a net appears. So I'd be super curious if you could go back to that moment, right, where you have to make the decision, do I stay or do I go? Can you remember what it was you thought or what it was you felt, or if you had a mantra or you created some sort of structure that really helped you take that next brave step that said, yes, I'm going. And I heard somebody say it once. They say the step from 0 to 1 is always the hardest.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's so true. Well, first of all, I chose to see it as an adventure, which it was. The
Mhm.
adventure of actually moving to a new city and exploring it and reaching out and making new friends. I will say it was a little bit easier because I had moved to go to university in a different city. So the mantra that I had used, was I've done this before. I've moved before,
Mhm.
and I've started from scratch before and I turned out okay. And so it doesn't have to be something as big as moving to a new city. It could be going to a movie, making, going and introducing yourself to make a new friend. It could be starting a new hobby, taking a new class. Remind yourself that at some point in your life, you were a beginner before. And it's turned out okay. And maybe it was exciting
Mhm.
and maybe it helped you grow. And so being able to draw on that memory of having done this before and it turned out okay, or that you came through it fine, I think it helps when people are looking, when women especially are looking about making or taking that next big step. It doesn't have to be as big as moving to a new city or a new country, or even quitting your job and starting something new. It could be as small as taking a new class to learn a new language, or picking up a new hobby. People are reluctant to do that. Or even, I'm going to say, putting on a bikini and going to the beach
Yeah.
and enjoying the beautiful weather that you might be having in your area. Remember, you've done it before.
Mhm.
And remember what I said earlier? Everyone's self-absorbed. Nobody's really paying
Yeah.
attention. So
Nobody's
don't
thinking
think
about
that
you anyhow.
nobody's really
That's what
looking at
Silver
you
says.
anyway. So don't.
Yeah. Well, and I think that you demonstrated something really important that I talk with my clients a lot, which is you did two things, and tell me if I'm wrong. One, you chose to move forward in the spirit of your values. And I heard you say, this is a great adventure. And I've heard you say the word adventure several times now. So it makes me wonder if, just approaching things like a great adventure is important to you, right? And so you're thinking, okay, this is an adventure, I can do it. And you also provided evidence. And I think that's so important because I think sometimes when there's a lot of ambiguity, we tend to focus on everything we don't know. And so I ask people to, well, let's check our evidence. What's another time in your life where you've done something similar? And so I just wanted to call that out and how important that is. You move forward in the spirit of your values, and you evidence checked. I've done this before. I know I can do it. See, I have a track record of making brave decisions that tend to work out for me. So
That's
again, tell me
right.
if I'm wrong, but I just noticed that.
You have it 100% right on the head there, exactly. And it is with living with my values around adventure. I'm also insatiably curious, and I find that people who have confidence are people who are curious. They want to know. They want to know what it's like to try that new restaurant on their own. They want to know what it's like to go and explore in a new city. And it doesn't mean that you're not nervous. It doesn't mean that you're not scared, or maybe even have a little bit of anxiety, but you still have the confidence to do it. And definitely you hit it on the head with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious. I've a couple more questions for you. I want you to step back as an HR director, and I want you to think about women in corporate America. What do you think women in corporate America need to know about showing up as their truest, most confident selves? And maybe you can answer that question like either what keeps them from speaking their true voice, or what are some tips to help them speak up in their true voice so they can be seen?
So I think, first of all, it's something I mentioned earlier, which is from a very early age, we're told to wait our turn, put up your hand if you have a question, don't be aggressive, don't shout. And I'm not encouraging anybody, by the way, in corporate America, corporate Canada, corporate anywhere, to shout and be aggressive. That's not where I'm going. But we were taught at a very early age to be demure. And that might serve us well in some cultures and might serve us well in some social settings. I don't know that it serves us well in corporate life. And so one thing I'm going to suggest is, I mentioned earlier about advocates and sponsors or mentors or coach. If you can't do it on your own, find somebody who can help you, guide you into which direction you should be going, not in terms of what job you should take, but how do you speak up? What's the smallest step that you can take to increase your confidence? When you're at a meeting, are you the person that never speaks up and never says anything? Why not start by making one comment at your next meeting? And the next meeting, make 2 comments, or amplify another woman's voice in that meeting. What's the smallest step that you can take just to start raising that, to raise your exposure, to raise your confidence, and to be heard? Because we're all often told, be demure, be quiet, don't raise your hand, don't raise your voice. And we carry that with us. The other thing that I want to mention is many years ago, if any of you remember the 2008 financial crisis that we were
Yeah.
in, there was a book written by Alan Ross Sorkin, and it was called Too Big to Fail, and it was about the financial crisis that happened with the banks. I don't know if you had a chance to read that book, but as I was reading that book, which was based on interviews, meeting minutes, so it was a first, second, and third person recounting of the crisis and what happened. As I was reading that, I was thinking, these CEOs, they actually weren't smarter than anybody. They were just like normal people who made bad decisions, either because they had imperfect information or because they didn't know better. When I was early in my career, when I was an individual contributor, both I started working as a receptionist and then I was a claims adjuster, I would look up at our CEOs and our executive vice presidents, and I kind of held them in awe. I thought, wow, these people must be so smart to be there and to be the executives. And I had them in sort of like this pedestal. And what I realized is that they're just ordinary human beings who happen to have a different job with maybe a broader scope of responsibility. But a lot of them, they're not that much smarter than most people. And I worked on a lot of executive teams, and I can say everyone's trying their best, everyone's doing what they can, but there's no magic halo. And we, I think as women, tend to look out at people who have other jobs. Maybe they're executives, or maybe they're in a role that's senior to us. And we think, I'll never be able to do that because they're smarter than me. No, they're probably not. Now, there's a few exceptionally brilliant people out there, but I would say in the majority, they're just as smart as you are.
Yeah.
And I think women need to remember that there's nothing magical about people in different roles, particularly in executive roles. And so if that's something that you aspire to, don't hold yourself back. You see a job and you think, I only have 50% of the qualifications, apply for it anyway, because you don't know who else has applied. You don't know if you might actually hit the mark. You don't know if you might have something that helps with their culture ad or culture fit. and you don't know if they're going to change the job to fit you. So half the time the hiring managers don't know what they're looking for either. So
Yeah.
go ahead and apply. The worst that's going to happen is they're going to say no, and you're no worse off than you are right now. The best that's going to happen is you're going to get that role and you get to do something different. So that's really my advice to women that are watching this, which is go for it anyway, even if you think the answer is going to be no, because you have nothing to lose by doing it, and you do have something to gain by doing it.
Absolutely. Two things you said that are so profound about, you kind of described imposter syndrome complex a little bit, and that some people believe that, well, one, it kind of comes from this place, right, where we have the halo effect. Other people are smarter than me, and when I get in that room, I'm going to be found out like a fraud. What I tell my clients is that, you know what, we tend to overestimate others' intelligence and underestimate our own.
Yes.
And oftentimes when we get in that room, we realize that these are people who just applied for the job and said yes.
Yes.
And there's nothing magical about it. And the other thing that you brought up, and as a former HR director, I think you and I can both agree that on a couple of things. We've hired many people over the course of our career who maybe only met 30 to 40% of the qualifications, but were just fantastic,
Yes.
you know, culture fit, motivated, talented, and we're like, we need you. I mean, again, would you agree with that?
Oh, I agree with you so much. I have so many examples of people that I've hired where we posted the role under one description with a set of responsibilities. And after we interviewed this particular person, we thought, okay, we have to have this person on our team, and this person's skills are a little bit different than what we were looking for, and we've actually altered the role
Yes.
in order to fit that person. This is why I say, so you just have to apply, because you never know. It won't work 100% of the time, but if you don't apply, it'll never work. It'll work 0% of the
And I
time.
always tell women, if you meet 100% of the qualifications, you're probably overqualified. You're probably going to
Oh, so 100%.
be bored. Yes.
100%. I will tell you, I've actually had 3 jobs in my life where I've had no experience in that role whatsoever, and I was hired. And one of those was I became a vice president of human resources with almost no human resources experience. I'm a poli-sci grad in my undergrad,
Me too.
and I worked in operations for the majority of my career. And so I became I became vice president of human resources with almost 0 HR experience. How does that happen? Because I was able to bring the skills from other jobs and translate those into what HR does. And that's just one example. I've had 3 jobs where I got the job and I had 0 experience, but I did have the skill set. And so I think we need to stop looking at just, have I done that job with that job title before? Because I think that's what prevents a lot of women from applying. Instead saying, do I have the skill set to do that work because I've done it elsewhere? Maybe it's through volunteering. Maybe it was through sports. Maybe it was through school. Maybe it's from your home life. Can you translate that skill set to that job, even if you've never done that job before? I'll tell you, if more people do that, they'd be surprised at how many times they might actually land that job.
I love that. Like, motto of the day: apply for all the jobs, ladies, especially the ones that you think are going to bring you passion. I want to
Yes.
shift gears a little bit because I want to hear about your book, because you're talking about allies and sponsors. And I want to hear what your thoughts are, because you talk about how women, you know, should raise their hand, be demure. And so in the States, one of the things that we're seeing at the time that we're recording this, there's a vice presidential candidate who's a woman. There has been another vice presidential candidate who's been a woman in the past, and a presidential candidate who's been a woman in the past. In Canada, you have women leaders. And sometimes when these, you know, women leaders, especially in very visible, they get called names like ambitious, nasty, overly direct, bossy. And so there's that whole other label. So I'd be curious if you could talk more about your book, allies and sponsorships, and maybe even, you know, when you're in those boardrooms, how do you manage the narrative around strong women leaders? So just say more about your book and everything in it.
I'd love to talk about my book, and before I do that, I would like to just address that, which is, unfortunately, we do come across that where women are called names, and God forbid we get called ambitious, as if
Yeah.
it's a bad thing to be ambitious. Men are ambitious and they're celebrated for that, and women are ambitious and it's frowned upon. And so I think it's incumbent upon women to amplify each other, very much like what you're doing, Kelly, with this program and with your coaching and with the blogs and the videos that you send out. Because if women can start amplifying each other where we can, so when we're in a meeting and a woman says something, if another woman can repeat or amplify what she said, oh, I agree with what Kelly says, and I think that we should blah, blah, blah. What happens if you do that often enough is it becomes commonplace. It doesn't seem unusual for a woman to seem ambitious or to make a good suggestion or to try and put up her hand and do something. For the first time in a company or in an organization, it may seem odd because it's not the culture and it's not what they're used to. But if we do it over and over again, suddenly it becomes commonplace and we never remember the time when we didn't do that. So I really want to say, I think as women, we need to support each other and amplify. That doesn't mean that we have to agree with everything that we're talking about and doing it. But I think that if we support each other and don't participate in the name calling and in the judging, I think that will go a long way. Eventually, it will become more commonplace and we'll get away from calling, because we don't call men those names.
Right. I
When
know.
they could, right.
We
Because
call them leaders.
that's right. Because that we just call them leaders. That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. Wonderful. So tell me more about your book. Does it
Yeah.
have a title yet? Tell us all about it and why we need to read it.
And my book is called The Squiggly Line Career. It will be out in the fall. I'm super excited, and we're going to have pre-orders coming in September. And what it's about, the first half of the book is for job seekers or just people in general, and it's really about how you can have a fantastic career by moving laterally, up, down, sideways, as opposed to always following a progression. You start as the junior accountant, then you're the senior accountant, then you're the manager of accountant, then you're the vice president of accounting. Instead, why not change professions, change industries, and really it's about applying your skills as opposed to years of experience in order to have a fantastic career. The second half of the book is aimed at recruiters and hiring managers, and it's really about how do you attract people with a squiggly line career to you, and why is it important to have people with a squiggly line career among your complement. So I'm very excited about this book. It's just in the final editing stages, and it should be out in 2 or 3 months.
Yeah. What's been your biggest aha or discovery while you're writing your book? 'Cause I know a lot of research goes into it. So any big ahas or takeaways for you personally?
The aha that I had is that there are far more people with a squiggly line career than I thought there'd be. I thought it was a small percentage of the population, but I was putting out calls to people and I was interviewing people to ask them about their career. And the number of people, first of all, who are not employed in a profession related to their university and college degree is astounding. I would say the majority of people are not employed in a profession that's related to
As a political science major, I would agree with you as well. So
that's fantastic. Secondly, a lot of people have switched careers and do so well into their 50s and 60s. It's not just a young person's game to switch careers, switch professions, because a lot of roles you can apply and transfer the skills from one to the other. I mentioned earlier that I became vice president of human resources with almost no human resources experience, but I was a claims adjuster for many years, and I had to know legislation. I dealt with lawyers. I had to know case law. I dealt with upset customers. Well, what was human resources?
that's
Legislation, dealing with lawyers, right? Dealing with upset employees and managers. I mean, there was so much transferable. And if you look at your body of work as a set of skills, as opposed to a set of job titles, then you can see there's a lot that you can do out there. The world's a fantastic place. Why limit yourself to just one career?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. What do you find what keeps people from taking that next step? Maybe there's some self-talk, right? Did you talk about that at all in your book about, people might start to just look at the ladder and say, I need to go that way. That's what everybody says I should do. So what gives
Yes.
people the courage to squiggly line it?
Yes, and I do talk about that in my book. And one of the things I talk about that I'm very passionate about is about emotional intelligence. And I
Mm.
think that if you want to increase your confidence, really start with building your emotional intelligence, particularly the first two pillars of self-awareness and self-management. If you are self-aware, you tend to be much more self-confident, because being confident, again, doesn't mean you're never nervous, you're never scared, you're never anxious. It doesn't mean that. Being confident isn't this bravado, this machismo, this aggression. That's not what confidence is. Confidence is knowing yourself, understanding that you're a fallible human being, that you have flaws and quirks and areas for improvement, just like everyone else, and acknowledging that you're just like everyone else, and that you can manage that you can still get up in the morning, you can still get dressed and go to work, and that you can still have friends, and you can still, even despite, or maybe even because of those flaws and foibles and quirks that we have about us. And so I do talk about that in my book, and I talk about emotional intelligence and about really working on your self-awareness and self-management. The other thing that I think helps with that, which I didn't write specifically in the book, is about, we talk a lot about self-esteem, but really I'd like to focus people on self-regard. If you
Mm.
and I are friends, and I'm encouraging you, Kelly, I'm not going to say to you, "Oh, Kelly, you suck.
Yeah.
You're going to lose. There's no way you're going to be successful at this." I would never talk to you that way as my friend, ever. Why would I talk to myself that way?
Hmm.
Why do I regard you more higher than I would regard myself? And so we really need to focus on self-regard. I would never talk to you as my friend that way. I would never say that. So why would I say that to myself? And you talked earlier about imposter syndrome. And I think that people who have imposter syndrome, by the way, I'm not one of them. I can talk to you about my inner cheerleader, but people who have imposter syndrome, they have this inner dialogue, and the voice is like, "Oh no,
Yeah.
you're going to fail. You cannot do it. You suck at this. You're going to suck at this." And would you ever talk to your friend that way? No.
No.
If you do, and if you do, by the way, talk to your friend that way, you need to be a better friend. You
Yeah.
need to do a little bit of self-reflection, because you need to be a better friend
Yeah.
if you do talk that way.
Yeah, it's so important. And, everybody has kind of a range of self-talk. And, we could get into the whole knowing yourself and personality types. Some people are harsher on themselves than others. That's just the way of it in the spectrum of personality. And I think what you said is really important, is just to notice. Just to notice that you have the voice, or if you have the voice, or maybe you never even noticed, you're like, oh yeah, that thing. And just to have a lot of compassion for yourself, to say, you know
Yes.
what, like, I wouldn't talk to my friend that way.
Yes.
I hear the narrative, and I'm going to choose to go ahead and move forward anyways. Because, we act ourselves into new ways of thinking, right? The actions of confidence come first. The feelings come later. You never feel super confident when you're doing something. You're like, oh, but I know exactly what you mean. So I'd love to ask you a couple final questions. What are just 3 confidence boosting tips, like quick ones, that women could take away? What do you love to do? Like, what boosts your confidence? It can be as trivial or as profound as you want it to be.
Okay, so of course, there's many people have read Amy Cuddy's books or seen her TED Talk, and she talks about the power pose. I have a young daughter, and whenever she's going into something that's maybe a little bit scary for her, maybe she has to give a speech at school or something like that, I talk to her. I say, "Let's do the power pose together." And so we choose one. My favorite one is when you
Yeah.
stand with your hands on your hips, and hers is the star one. She likes to do that one, but there's a couple of more, which I'm sure many of your listeners and viewers are familiar with. So I love to do that one. It's just fun to do, and I love standing like that. So that's a lot of fun. On the more profound scale, one of the things I do, and at the risk of sounding morbid, is I really focus on perspective. So 50, or let's just say 60 years from now, I'll probably be dead. 160 years from now, no one's going to remember me.
Yeah.
And while you think, oh, that's kind of like morbid and depressing. The reality is when you put it in perspective like that, why would I not put on a bikini and go to the beach?
Yeah.
160 years from now, nobody's going to remember that Angela Champ was wearing a bikini, had a little bit of belly flab while she was walking on the sand. Nobody will know,
Amen.
nobody will
Amen.
care,
Your
and
body
nobody.
is always bikini ready. Yes.
Right? Exactly. You know how you get a bikini body?
You put
You
one
put on a
on.
bikini. That's how you get a bikini body.
Yeah,
That's right.
exactly.
And so it's really about putting things in perspective. And the third thing that I'll say is what I mentioned earlier, which is we think everyone's paying attention to us and maybe judging us and making, and if they are, who cares? That's their issue, not yours,
Yeah.
right? Life
Yeah.
is too short to really be concerned and to miss out. Why should you miss out on good things, whether that's applying for a job, going and meet the love of your dreams, or enjoying a beautiful day at the beach, just because you think people are going to judge you? That's their issue, not yours. So
Exactly.
just put it aside and do it anyway.
I love it. I love it. Not letting somebody else's narratives and judgments control
Yes,
your life.
that's right.
Any final parting words of wisdom? Anything that we haven't talked to about? Anything I haven't asked you that you feel like women should know?
I'm going to say that I think it's really important that you cultivate curiosity. If you are a curious person, you will be much more motivated to have confidence to pursue something, because if you want to know, how does this work? Why does this happen? How do I do this? Then you're much more likely to pursue it, ask questions, and in that way, you're demonstrating confidence. As you mentioned a moment ago, when you behave that way, the feelings follow. If you act in a confident way, suddenly you are confident and people see you as confident. And even vulnerability requires confidence. I know a lot of people are really talking about Brene Brown's work right now, and she talks about vulnerability. But if I'm vulnerable with you, I have to have the confidence that you're not going to turn around and use it against me, or have the confidence that if you do turn around and use that vulnerability against me, that I'm going to survive it. So even vulnerability, which is something that people are talking about a lot, it requires confidence. You
Totally.
cannot be vulnerable without confidence.
I
I wanna share two really quick things before we go. One is, everyone knows, I'm sure, this poem, this excerpt from the poem by Marianne Williamson, which is, "Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you." I read that when it was in my 20s, and it just stuck in my brain.
Goosebumps. I love Mary.
Yes.
I shared a quote from her today. I love it.
Yes, and I say that to people, to women on my team all the time when they're like, "Oh, I don't know if I can do that. I don't think I can." I say, "Your playing small does not serve the world." I say that all the time.
Yeah.
And so I love it if people could remember that. The second thing is, just I was preparing for this conversation, I just happened upon a tweet, believe it or not, like something just showed up in the feed. And he wrote, "Stop letting your potential go to waste because you don't feel confident or ready enough. People with half your talent are making serious waves while you're still waiting to feel ready." And I thought, oh, yes, I have to write that one down.
Yes, I love it. I love it. There's an athlete, and I don't remember who said it, but I read it in a tweet once too. This is the problem. I need to screenshot tweets. They said, "We don't play the game because we're ready. We play the game because the start time is at 11:30 a.m." And I was like, yes, like sometimes you just have to get on the court and go for it without feeling 100% ready. You will never feel 100%
You
ready.
will never feel 100% ready, whether you're talking about going for that job or having a child or moving to a new city or getting married. You will never feel 100% ready, ever.
Oh my gosh, never, never. Okay, so people are probably just dying to know, where can they find you? How can they follow you? Tell them all the things so they can go and get all of your stuff. We know that your
Love
book
it.
will be coming out, and we'll drop a link for that when we
Yes.
have the pre-order. So tell them everything else.
So easy way, you can follow me or connect with me on LinkedIn, just Angela Champ, or you can follow me on Twitter, which is @Angela_Champ, Or to make it even easier still, I have a website, which is www.angelachamp.com. There you can find information about my first book, which has been out for a few years, my upcoming book, which should be out in the fall, as well as speaking engagements and workshops that I participate in. So I would love to connect with some of your viewers if they'd like to connect with me.
Oh my gosh, they're going to be hunting you down. I know they are, because I just can't thank you enough for all the beautiful and inspiring wisdom you gave, because so many women are looking for the courage, the confidence. And I love how you even said adding in that curiosity and how that can help you take that brave next step. And you showed us that, how you move in line with your values, how you really transfer your skills and realize that a lot of the things that we've done in other areas are exactly what we need to transfer to do something else so that we can rise again. And so these nuggets are awesome. I so appreciate your time and your energy. And I know that they'll be checking you out. I can't wait for your book to come out. And thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you for hosting this and for putting out the call, and for everybody watching. Connect with Kelli and tell her you want to be interviewed too. Put up your hand. Don't wait to be asked. Don't wait to be nominated.
I love it. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. And we'll see you for the next interview series. Thanks for coming to Clarity and Confidence TV.
Thanks, Kelli.